Hey folks, it's Bear Gardener, and we are on to another Covert Operations video as I try and keep up with the excitement of the upcoming expansion. We have arrived at the outgoing cards. So far I have done videos on the, and will continue to do videos on because they're not done yet, the reveals of cards that we have coming into the game from the new expansion as they appear and are revealed. I have done a video on the cards returning from the reserve pool. All of those you can find links down below or in the YouTube. As I continue to do, I should say, I am Cards content creator, a member of the contributor program, all of the usual. I'm not paid to do this. I am supported but not endorsed by 1939 Games, and I stream and play this game and create content because it's something I'm passionate about. Passionate both about card games and about kind of education and helping people get better at things that they enjoy. Hence, a lot of focus on new player content. Although there's all sorts of content going on around my YouTube at the moment, so stick around, loads more happening. This one, we're going to look at the cards leaving the game. Now, buckle up kids, because judging by the length of my previous videos, this is going to be a marathon, not a sprint. There are a lot of cards to cover, and it's likely that on some of them I will have very little to say, and on some of them I will have quite a lot to say about what my opinion is on the change, on the card leaving, and whether it will impact anything in particular. So, unusually for me, I'm going to keep this preamble relatively short. Let's dig right in. So, Expeditionary Corps is a 2-cost, 1-op cost, 2/2 infantry. With the deployment effect, add a resistance card to the enemy hand. So, for those who don't know resistance, and you probably don't know it that well because it's not necessarily going to be around for a very long time, this is resistance. Resistance is a card which, once placed in your hand, you have to make a choice of what to do with it. You can play it, and when you play it, you pay one credit to play it to get it out of your hand, because you're going to want it out of your hand. You don't want your hand clogged up with complete gubbins. Once you play it, you have to choose to either take a single point of damage to your HQ, and then also, or you can choose to just remove the top card of your deck. Both of these are bad. So the archetype, the general idea behind it, of course, is to flood your opponent's hand with really bad cards that do really bad things to them. Expeditionary Corps being a standard card is presumably a fairly efficient way of doing this. It's going. I don't think I'm going to miss it. I don't think many people are going to miss it. Resistance is not an archetype that sees much play, even as a concept, and therefore this card going is probably going to have very little impact. Unless you are a die-hard fan of Resistance, because beyond its resistance and the fact that it has a very cool piece of art, by the way, which I am sad to see leaving, Expeditionary Corps really doesn't do much. So we'll move on, because we've got plenty of cards to cover. Next up, we have a Polish card which is leaving, which is the PZL P7. So PZL P7 is a 1-cost, 1-op cost, 1/2 fighter. It has Blitz, and when an enemy unit moves into the front line, retreat this unit. So this is a standard card, which is really, on the face of it, it's an aggro air card. This thing is cheap and blitzes, but has the drawback that as soon as the enemy takes the front line, it pops back to hand. There are ways actually to make that less of a negative, but not massively, and ultimately this isn't a card that is changing much. PZL P7 is not seeing huge amounts of play. It's a card that is just leaving. I don't think you're massively going to miss it unless you are particularly trying to play Polish Air, and even then, Air Exile doesn't run this card, so I'm pretty much indifferent on it going. It's kind of a shame, because I do like a Blitz aircraft, but it's not that great, so no huge loss. We can move on fairly quickly from this one. Okay, so this is another Polish card that is leaving the game. This is Daring Strike. This is a 4-cost order that deals 2 damage to any target. That's 4-cost order. On the face of it, it's terrible. 4 cost for 2 damage is awful value in this game. But this card has seen a fair chunk of play recently because it costs 2 less for each exile unit you control, which means if you control 2 exile units, you get to deal 2 damage to any target for free, and it's a standard card. This card has been a big staple in the Brit Poland Exile Air list. And this will impact that list in the sense that that list is losing some of its directed damage. That list did run this card and did use it for direct damage. It's not losing all of it, it still has at least one card that will be doing the job if we don't see new ones. I personally don't think this is a deck-breaking hit. It's just going to make the deck have to adapt a bit, and will probably mean we see some different exile units thrown in there to try and buff up the deck to replace the loss of this. But this is probably the first card we've seen that actually has an impact on an existing archetype that is seeing play, because this is a staple, as I say, in a lot of Air Exile lists. And it's a good card. So, yeah, this one a little bit more on it. I'm not surprised to see it leaving, because Exile Air was/is still quite strong and very fast, and a little tweak like this, no harm, no foul for me. I don't object to it leaving. I think it's probably a good call. And I'm pretty much okay with this as a change. But it's the first time I will say we've probably seen a card that is going to have an impact on an existing archetype. This one is Hell. Hell is a 1-cost order. And it is it's an intel order, so it's intel 1, so you learn the identity of 1 card in your opponent's hand when you play it. It's a special card, so we can run 2 of them, and the order text is your Legions units get +1/+1 when it survives combat. Now, Legions does not see a huge amount of play, but it is perennially tried out time and time again. It does endlessly come back as an archetype that people are trying to make work, and Hell does occasionally see play, because on the face of it, this order can provide some really good value timed well. It's cheap, it affects your Legions cards, which is the majority of what you want your Legions deck to be doing, and it gives them a theoretically very strong buff if they can keep rolling, especially considering your Legions units also get +1/+1 every time you play an intel card. So this does hit Legions in the sense that it is removing one of the tools that they particularly enjoy having. However, is it the end of the world? Probably not. I don't think it's world-breaking, but if you're a Legions fan, then this is probably a hit that you might not want to see. And it's certainly worthy of note that it is leaving the pool. Next up, Italy, an Italian card. This is Desert Push. This is another order. It's a 1-cost order, and the text is fully repair target ground unit. If it's pinned, remove pin. It's standard, it's 1 cost. It doesn't see a lot of play. No one's going to miss it. Really, that is my opinion. I don't think this has seen enough play for it to really be relevant that it's going. This whole fully repair thing never really kicked off. I know there are various cards out there, CBs and stuff like that people have looked at and gone, is there a way to make repair do? I've even tried it myself. It didn't go well. And I don't think we're going to lose. This is not a big loss. It's just an order that's rotating out. Won't be noticed, won't be missed. A card that will be noticed but won't be missed, in my opinion, is Decisive Defense. Now, this is an Italian countermeasure. It is a 3-cost Italian countermeasure, and it says when a unit, it's a special, I should say, you can run 2 of them. When a unit attacks your HQ, add a 6th Alpini next to it, defending. This card, whenever Italy sees play, especially Alpine, sees a chunk of play, because it is very, very strong, because when it triggers, you get this, the 6th Alpini, which is a really good guard. This is a good card. This is a good card that has seen play. This will affect Alpine to a degree, because there are Alpine decks out there that run decisive defense, and they will kind of miss this because it gives them an extra really strong guard that is Alpine. So this one does have an impact. I don't think it's Alpine's never been strong enough yet that I think it's meta shaking, because Alpine's never really defined meta recently anyway. The past of the game is a different thing, but at the moment Alpine just doesn't have the traction and the speed to affect it. But if you are a fan of playing Alpine, you are going to miss this card. Also, cool art leaving the game again. Although there's a lot of cool art in this game, so I'm going to say that a lot in this video. In fact, if you want to play a really fun drinking game, take a shot every time I say cool art, and I'm sorry for your hangover. To Germany, we have arrived. We have Exploit the Gap. Note, by the way, we are going to hop around a lot in this, because I'm just doing this in the order that the actual list appears on the website of cards going to the reserve pool. There is no planning to this. I didn't have time to go and reorder this the way that I did other ones. I'm just giving you my thoughts as I go, so hey. And everyone likes a good ramble every now and then, but I will keep it to a minimum. This is the first elite that is leaving the game. This is an elite order. It is 6 cost, so you'd want it to be good. Exploit the Gap. If you control the front line, draw one of three top units of your deck, give it Blitz, and set its cost to 0, put the rest on the bottom. That's a mouthful. Hypothetically, just hypothetically, this could be really good. If you know your deck well enough and you're confident of what you could pull with this, you could pay 6 to get a really expensive unit, like a massive tank. Like, I suppose the big payoff that everyone would love to see this is somehow be able to pull this off, so that one of the 3 that you draw is the German 7/7 tank that deals its damage to HQ every time it attacks, and then you've given it Blitz, so hypothetically at a cost of 0, so you get to pull it, put it down, and then you pay 4 credits for its operation cost, or 6 credits, whichever of the 2 it is, to deal 14 damage to the enemy's HQ. But I mean, the fact that you can follow the conversation here, the stretch that I'm talking about with this card, while it can have value, really, is it going to be massively missed? Probably not. This is not a meta-defining, super played German elite. It's a card that hypothetically has value, and depending on what other units are entering the game and how much. And this is where I will talk about the reasoning that I see in some changes. I actually think there isn't a really good reason why this card is leaving. This card is a good choice to leave because we are seeing more countermeasures and stuff like it, and that means we're going to see more unit light decks, and this card's value goes up substantially in a deck where you have less units, because you have a much narrower target range. Just saying, I think there's probably a really good reason to just rotate this thing out, because it could get exploitable. Because if you've only got 3 units plus a bunch of countermeasures and some orders in your deck, then suddenly this could be broken. But right now, it's not defining meta, and now it can't be used that way, because it's going away. UK! We come to another German elite leaving the game. And this one, spoilers, is going to have an impact. So this is the FW, or Focke-Wulf 190 JAGDBOMBER. It is a 5 cost, 2 op cost, 5/4 fighter, and it has a really potent deployment effect, which is send an enemy ground unit to owner's hand. This card sees a lot of play in German main decks, because the deployment effect is incredibly strong, and the fighter itself is a really good body. This is a hit to a number of German archetypes. It is removing one of their biggest tempo-denying tools. Like this card is a very good example of tempo denial. So I've talked previously about two types of tempo. The tempo methodology of I am using my resources to advance my win con, and the I am using my available resources to deny my opponent's ability to use their resources to advance their win con. This thing fills the latter category really well and gives you a good body to boot, which is why it's seen a lot of play, particularly of late. So this card will be missed. I personally am sad to see it go. I don't know that it's that broken and it really needs to go, but I can take the hit and I'll eat it because I do understand that it is seeing a huge amount of play and maybe it's time to just change things up a bit. But I am sad to see it go, and I'm sad to see the back of its artwork because, I mean, come on. The art on this card is just so cool. But yeah, this one is an impactful change. And another German elite is leaving the game. Team sensing time. So Germany is taking some elite hits in this rotation. And honestly, for good reason, because Germany's had some really strong elites recently. This is the Tiger 1E. So this is a 7/7 tank. It's 8 cost, 3 op cost. So it's very expensive. However, it has heavy armor 2, which is really strong. And it has cannot be targeted by enemy orders. Used well, this thing in tank decks can theoretically be a nightmare. It's very slow, so it doesn't actually see a lot of play, but I have seen it played well. And it can be very annoying, because of course you can't target it with orders, which makes it hard to remove. Unless you have area of effect orders that by default catch it, because of course can't be targeted by enemy orders doesn't mean can't be affected by enemy orders. That said, is this card super strong and going to change the game by going? No. Is this card a solid German elite that sees some play, especially at lower levels and lower ranks? Yes. So people will notice it's gone. If it's in your collection and you're running a tank-heavy deck, you might miss this. It's not world-breaking, but again, it is a notable German elite that's leaving. Nation change. This is a Britain card. It's another elite that's leaving. This is the Royal Ulster Rifles. It is a 4 cost, 1 op cost, 2/7 unit with smokescreen, and has, when your HQ is damaged, deal that amount of damage to this unit instead. This card doesn't see a lot of play. This card is not going to be missed. The art going to be missed again. Really cool piece of art. I will say it, there are some nice pieces of art that are leaving in this. This is a very funky piece of art. I really should do an art video at some point. Anyway, yeah, on the grand scheme of things, this is a British elite that no one's going to miss. It doesn't see enough play that anyone's going to particularly care. It's not that strong. I've seen it played a few times, and it can be a bit irritating, but really, yeah, you eat some damage. And then I'll blow you up and move on. Very subject to removal. Not a big loss. But it is an elite rotating out from the Brits. Speaking of elite rotating out from Britain, the Sunderland Mk V. This is another British elite that's leaving. It is a 6 cost, 2 op cost, 2/6 bomber, and it says, at the start of your turn, draw a card. And it has a really cool piece of, like, sea travel aircraft stuff. Anyway, if you look into the history of the Sunderland, it's an interesting aircraft, and this is a nice piece of art. Anyway, I say that because I'm mostly vamping on having at least a few seconds of conversation on a card which is leaving that no one is going to care about. This card does not see play. It is not a good enough draw engine that anyone is regularly using it. It is way too expensive and slow to be a worthwhile bomber in a nation that already has a bunch of really good bombers that aren't elites. Barring the loss of the artwork and the fact that the Sunderland is an interesting piece of military history, really not sad to see this go. She gone, we move on. On to another British elite leaving the game, and this one is a doozy. This is going to make some people very, very happy. some people really, really sad, and some people... There's got to be some people out there that'll be indifferent about this, but honestly, this is a polarising enough card that I think everyone, or at least the vast majority of players, is going to have an opinion one way or the other on this card leaving. I'm not surprised at the choice of this card leaving, but I'll get into my opinions on it in a minute. But this is the Commonwealth. This is a 12-cost British order. It is an elite, of course. It has another really cool piece of art. Get that out of the way before we go into the depth of conversation about this card. This card has a very potent piece of text. Deal 20 damage to target HQ if your HQ has 30 or more defense. Full stop. Draw 4 cards. Okay, so firstly, if you don't have 30 HQ defense, this is 12 cost to draw 4 cards and a terrible, terrible use of resources. But that's not what this card's about, and it never has been. This card is a win con, or an alt win con, depending on how you play it. 20 damage to target HQ is huge. In many games, unless your opponent is running HQ defense gain, it's game winning for it's 12 credits, win the game. Which is why lots and lots of people don't like this card. There are a lot of people who don't like this card way too much, in my opinion. It is over disliked. Is this card strong? Yes. Has this card been a defining win condition for Britain decks, particularly those that are played moderate to the bottom end of ladder? Yes, you will see it a lot. Most recently, and most egregiously for those who don't like it, it has seen heavy play in 2 very specific Brit main decks. The first of which is Brit-US Ramp, in which, particularly in Asia, although in Far Eastern Asia, but also in Europe and some of the US, I see this card used in Brit-US Ramp, which is all about ramping up to get bombers, as an alt win condition, because you run some glamour boys and you run some naval power, and you've got some HQ defense gain that you're controlling with anyway, so why wouldn't you include this? I was, and continue to have been, one of the advocates for I do not get a Brit-US Ramp deck that runs those cards and doesn't run Commonwealth as a one-off alt win condition. Anyway, we saw at the OCC some people try it without the Commonwealth as an alt will condition, and honestly, the ones with Commonwealth were, in my opinion, better decks. Personal opinion. No criticism of anyone in particular. I am aware that the three-peat world champion didn't run this as an alt-win condition in one of his OCC decks. So, hey, I'm not picking a fight, J. King. I know where I sit, and you're a better player than me. But in my personal opinion, this is just a smart alt-win condition in a Brit-US Ramp deck. The other place it's seen play, and where it has become probably even more polarising, is in one of my personal favourite decks to play, which is the Brit main Soviet ally Commonwealth push combo deck. It's one of the best hard control decks currently in the meta, especially if you get good on it. It, by the way, is one of the hardest decks to pilot well in the game right now. I would say its piloting process is right up there with the pilot skill level that I noted in Noen 5's Beautiful Madness deck that I did a video on. Anyway, the point being, this is run as another one in that push deck, so between the Commonwealth and access to the combinations of HQ defense gain and then being able to use Red Dawn's sickles and push, this deck can and does rip someone from 40 to 50 HQ defense to dead in 2 turns. And it hard controls you while you're not there. It's a very potent deck, but it was going to be blunted even without the loss of Commonwealth, because it lost 2 of its losing, we'll get to them in a bit, 2 of its biggest board clear and control tools in this rotation. However, we're not there yet. We're focusing on this card. So there are people who are going to enjoy seeing Commonwealth go. I'm kind of sad to see it go, because I actually think it's a fun card to build up to, but I'm also not world-breaking on it. I think it's kind of cool that we're going to get the chance to see Britain have to work towards some different win conditions. And being a fan of British bombers and aircraft in general, I'm really excited, plus commandos. I'm quite excited to experiment with Britain, so I don't lament the removal of this, but I do not celebrate it to the degree that some people did. / still are. Right, it's another elite. This time it's a United States elite. This is Counterstrike, which, unsurprisingly, is a countermeasure. It is a 3-cost countermeasure, and it says, when a unit attacks your HQ, destroy the unit. I mean, on the face of this is pretty potent, but it also requires a lot of timing. It's not world-breaking to see this card go. This is not a card that was prevalent, but it did see some play. There are some decks that do use it, not many, in my opinion, at least not in my experience. But it's a solid and occasionally very, very effective countermeasure, but it is very easily played around. Kind of like Ultra, you can mostly see it coming when it matters, which means that you can play around it. So is it going to change anything massively? No, but it is a noteworthy one because it's another elite card that's leaving. Also, it's a really pretty piece of art. I mean, I just want to take a moment, actually, and I don't often do this, to really point out that some of the art on these cards, I mean, this particular piece of art is very, very of its time. If you've seen American-era World War II art, you'll get what I mean. But anyway, it just looks cool, the eagle, the thing. Very funky. But this is not meta-changing. It's just a card that saw some play that's going. It's another US elite leaving the game. This one is Long Tom. I'm saying it again. Cool art. This is a 5-cost, 2-op cost, 2/4 artillery piece that has, when Long Tom attacks, distribute 3 damage between random enemies. It's not great. Like, honestly, in the grand scheme of US elites, this is not up there with them. It's so situational, it's so random. Does it occasionally see play? Yeah, particularly, when I last did a new player climb on one of my alt accounts, I saw a chunk of this for 2 or 3 ranks, I think round about rank 8 or 9, somewhere in there. I was getting into the upper, like, the top 10 ranks, and I saw a chunk of this being played for a while, like a little pocket meta where this thing was actually, like, people were attempting to use this. Which was interesting. I mean, the 4 health, I think, was attractive because it put it out of range of some things, but it's so removable. Anyway, it's not a lamented loss. It isn't going to really define the meta in the loss. It's just a not heavily used US elite that's going softly into the background. Sorry, Long Tom. I mean, you've got a cool name and some funky art, but no one's really gonna miss you. So, another US elite going. This one is the B-17F. You would be forgiven for not really having a clue what this card is. Because it really doesn't see play. For a number of extremely good reasons. I am not, by the way, as will be apparent, I'm not a fan of this card. So this is a 10-cost, 3-op cost bomber. It is a 6/6 and has blitz, so if you have 13 credits, i.e. you're ramping, you can get 6 damage out of it. It's got heavy armor 1, so it's quite tough, and it has cannot be targeted by enemy orders. But this really doesn't see a lot of play, even in heavy ramp decks. It's just not that good. It really isn't. There are better options that also aren't elite. I would take the Brit Lancaster over this, and that's a sad truth. This is not a lamentable loss for any archetype. It is just another US elite, which is solid and going. Doesn't see a lot of play. Very interesting artwork again, though. I like the contrast between the snow. I think this is kind of turning into an art video every now and then. Hey, forgive me. Also, if you did start taking part in the drinking game, which was mostly a joke when I said it, like a few cards, stop. For your own good. You're forgiven. Cease. I don't wish to give anyone liver disease. But yeah, no one's going to miss this card. Here's an interesting one. So we've got our first Soviet card. It is an elite, and this is Minority Recruits. It is a 10-cost order, and it is, on the face of it, one of the most potent orders and one of my least favourite cards in the entire game. No, my fact that this is one of my least favourite cards doesn't mean it sees a lot of play. It actually doesn't, but I don't like the design space of this card. Second. So this is 10 cost. Minority Recruits. Take control of an enemy unit. I hate the design space of this card, and I don't say that often. I do not like any design space that is take control of your opponent's cards. I enjoy control decks. I enjoy all sorts of interesting kind of jank that you can do, but just steal an opponent's card, it hits me where my design brain doesn't like it, because this is such an unbalanced thing at times. That said, at 10 cost, this doesn't see enough play to be particularly relevant. I've seen it see some play, but it's really not that heavily played, because it's too expensive. By the time there's a good target on the board, you've either won or you've lost, realistically, and this is unlikely to save you in one swipe. That said, I'm going to do it again. Really cool art. I do not lament the removal of this card. I will also not regret never seeing this card's design space come back again, ever. Speaking of cards that I will happily never see come back from the reserve pool, I give you another Soviet elite, the 39th Rifle Regiment, and if you've read the card while listening to me talk, you'll probably already know where I'm going with this. I will say, this particular piece of art, this incredibly condescending, arrogant-looking soldier looking down in a way, this tiny, pathetic thing, really gives the feel that I get from this card, which is it just makes me unhappy and grumpy. Grumpy Bareface. 5 cost, 1 op cost, 5/5 body. Deployment. Take control of an enemy unit with 2 cost or less. Just stop it. Leave this design. If you are 1939, if you are watching this, just this particular design space. The one that is just swipe a unit on the board and immediately add it to your own side. Please leave it alone. Just walk away. Salvage is kind of fine because it's doing something similar, but it's also destroying the unit, and you have to make an effort with some attack to it. This just feels bad on a stick. Happy to see it gone. This card, by the way, did see quite a lot of play. Happy to see it gone. We'll be very happy if it never comes back again. T28. It's another Soviet elite leaving the game. This is a 3 cost, 1 op cost Blitz tank with smokescreen. It's 2/3, and it has Pincer. When this unit is destroyed, put it on top of its owner's deck. It's an interesting card. Also, short time. Seriously, cool art. This kind of isolated snow thing. But anyway, the card. This card should probably see more play than it does. There's probably a way to make this good. I don't see it often enough that anyone's ever figured it out, and it's probably because it's an elite, and you'd probably want more than one of these in your deck to really see it see play. That said, if you could get it to work, the pincer effect is pretty strong, because it's a constantly recurring card, and that is always dangerous in any game in which decking out can kill you. Just something to be aware of. It's one of the reasons that I don't think you will ever see a card like this that is super proliferate. But honestly, I'm quite sad to see it go, because I don't think it's ever reached a place that I've seen where it did anything super cool, and I'm sure there's something in there if you could figure it out. Anyway, it's gone, but but it isn't going to change anything huge. I don't know anyone who's heavily playing it. If you are, by the way, and you have decks that you've heavily played this in and you found them interesting, please let me know. Japan Elite, Lightning Conquest, leaving the game. So Lightning Conquest is a 2-cost Japanese order. Friendly infantry units are immune to damage and can both move and attack this turn. On the face of it, this is a really good card, and yet weirdly does not see a lot of play. Because it's a win more card, and it's sad, because it's, if I recognise the artwork piece, this is a fairly classic poster art from Japan in World War II, but I'm not an expert and someone will probably correct me, which was used in a campaign about, anyway, there's a historical context there, but I'm sidetracking, and I said I'd try and not make this video 17,000 hours long. Lightning Conquest is a sad order for me, because I want it to be good, because it's a cool concept and a really interesting design space, but the problem is, this is an order that adds earth-shattering speed to a nation that already has earth-shattering speed, making it the definition of a win more card. And honestly, most good deck builders and top players do not have room for win more cards in their deck. We don't need them. I don't want to win more, I just want to win efficiently. So, is this going to change anything majorly in the meta? No. Am I sad to see it go? A little tiny bit, because it would have been cool, but I sort of hope, again if 1939 are listening, that this comes back with a little bit of a rework to make it a bit better. Because I think it's quite cool. Okay, so it's another Japan Elite, and I am going to try and bite back my bias in design space. Because I'm aware that this is one of my design space biases that is probably unfair. But I will declare in advance that this is difficult for me, because I generally dislike the archetype of this card. Right, last rites. 3-cost order. Shuffle 8 Kamikaze cards into your deck. Kamikaze, aside from having really cool art, and it does, I love this piece of art, because it is very evocative of the thing that it represents, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute, is a 1-cost order, deal 1 damage to the enemy HQ and draw a card. This is a 1-cost order that has insane value. 1 card and 1 damage to the enemy HQ for 1 credit. Yes, please, all day long. Anyway, I'll bring back to last rites. Now, the whole Kamikaze thing rubs me up the wrong way for 2 reasons. 1, as a design space, this spawn a bunch of extra cards in your deck I don't like in any game where deck space can lead to win con, where decking out can lose. Especially when the card also deals direct damage to your HQ, thus accelerating decking out. I've never been a big mill fan. I mean, I'll play it if I have to because it's good in a meta, but I don't mind it in small doses, but when it's heavily dosed, it can get very silly. The other reason that I'm not a fan of this as a design space is that there are some parts of the history of World War II that I personally think need to be carefully considered in the way that we approach them, and the design of this is just a little too on the nose for me. So Kamikaze, the whole Divine Wind idea and the Sacrifice of Soldiers thing, you can go and read about it and the very, very questionable ethics involved in it, and the process that was involved, and why that piece of art on the Kamikaze card has responses to me. It's interesting. It's interesting design space, not design space I like, as I've just said, and this is a card that did see play. So I'm getting past my issues, which I wanted to declare in advance in case it biases my analysis, because I am human. This is a very strong card, arguably, in my opinion, too strong, and I'm not going to lament seeing it go from a game balance perspective at all. Truism, I don't like it. I don't like the archetype it feeds into because it's a feels bad kind of archetype for me. I know there are people who enjoy playing these decks. I'm not one of them. So I don't lament its loss. However, it will have some impact on certain Edge Japan burn decks. Deja vu all over again as we reach KIKKA. This is the second of the elites that define the archetype that I was literally just talking about with last rites. 7 cost, 3 op cost, 6/5 Blitz aircraft. Which ain't bad on its own, frankly. It's very expensive op cost wise, but 10 points for 6 damage to the enemy HQ can be good. Destruction. Shuffle 4 kamikaze cards into your deck. See my previous. I'm just going to say see my previous comments. I'm not going to go over it all again. This is literally coming after the last card. I don't lament seeing this go. It's not a space I like, and between the two of them, it gives you 12 extra cards in your deck that accelerate it. Anyway, the math stacks up. I don't like it. Glad to see it not around. Special card time! Germany, the JU or Junkers 88G6. This is a 5 cost, 2 op cost fighter. It's a 4/6, and it has when this unit destroys a unit, add a copy of the destroyed unit to your hand. This is sort of salvage before salvage happened. And I think that's part of the reason that it's rotating out. I think it might come back with salvage as its text and some changes. Psychic prediction. It's a good card as a special. It's a good card. It does see some play. So there are decks that probably run this and will probably miss it. But I don't think it's not leaving a huge hole that's world breaking, but it can be a value train if you can get it running. If you can get this up and running, it really can be value on a stick. It can be quite strong. Plus, it has really cool night flight art. But I have seen this card played well. I have played this card. It is a decent card. It will impact some decks. I don't think it's world breaking, but it's relevant. Another German special. Enemy sighted. It's a 5 cost order. Destroy target unit with cost 3 or less. Draw a card. This is an expensive but good value removal card. Because destroying a target unit with 3 or less cost, pretty good effect as it is. Drawing a card, another good effect as it is, and it's a special. Doesn't see a huge amount of play, doesn't see no play. And I think with the new German archetypes shaking out the way they are, removing this from the pool is a good shout because I think it had the potential to become too strong in a lot of low unit / unitless German decks. I think it's a smart rotate out. So while it may not feel like it has a big impact, particularly given that it's not hyperplayed in the current meta, I do think it is quite controlling the new meta, which is probably a good sign. It's another German special. This is the U48. It's another order. This is a 3 cost order. The enemy cannot deploy units next turn. Super cool art again. I love the fact that you can see the aircraft carrier. I think it's an aircraft carrier. It's hard to tell. Anyway, don't lose yourself in the art there. Kind of funky. I actually like this order. I've seen it see some play. I have used it a couple of times in hard German control decks that I wanted to play around with. Has the potential to be very strong, but there is a countermeasure called Stranglehold, which frankly does this. It has roughly similar effect because it stops you being able to play credits. It's countermeasure the first time you deploy a unit or lose all remaining credits. This is just it's juice squeeze again. Like for 3 cost, it is very rare that this has enough value on the next turn. It is possible though, so it is not a terrible card, but it's not a super strong card in the meta that anyone's going to hugely miss. And like the previous card, might have become a bit too strong depending on how the new German main decks shake out. We shall see. But I think this is a smart remove by 1939's designers. DORNIER DO 217, another German special that's going 6 cost, 2 op cost bomber. It's 5/4 and has when DORNIER DO 217 destroys a unit, the enemy must discard a card at random. I'll be blunt, this card didn't see a lot of play. The STUG does it better. This is very expensive for what it does, probably isn't going to be missed. Certainly not going to be meta-defining. KIKKA, Britain special. This is the AVRO ANSON. It is a 2 cost, 2 op cost, 1/4 fighter with, again, super cool art, which is nice because it needs a redeeming quality. When you attack with a Spitfire, draw a card. As a special card at 2 cost and 2 op cost as a 1/4, this is just not good enough to make the card. In principle, it could be a really good draw engine for an air deck, but Britain has better draw tools, and certainly doesn't have the space on its support line to just have this sitting occupying a place that could be used for a much more effective fighter or bomber. In my opinion, this isn't a big loss. The STIRLING Mk I S3. Guess what? I'm going to say the art's cool, because it really is. One of my favourite pieces of art in the game, actually, which I'm sad to see go. I'm also sad to see this card go for another reason, but I'll explain that in a minute. It's a 6 cost, 2 op cost, 6/4 bomber, and it has the deployment effect, add a Gladiator Escort fighter to the support line. It's a British special. Gladiator Escort has a 1 cost, 1 op cost, 1/1. However, damage dealt to STIRLING Mk I S3 is dealt to this unit instead. I am not sad to see this go because this is super strong and seeing huge amounts of play in the meta. I'm kind of sad to see this go because I like this as a design space and I think it's interesting, and I think it's a shame that we never saw anyone really make anything good of it. I'm sort of happy though, because I'm hoping it means it'll come back with a rework. I mean, if you are reworking this 1939, one direction to go in might be making it slightly less pricey. If you really want this thing to get played, it might need to be just a little bit less potent, but also a lot less expensive. Because it's a shame. I like the design space. In effect, having a one-shot, don't care how much damage you do to me because all it does is blow up a 1/1, is cool. I just like the escort idea. However, it clogs up the support line because it's inefficient, because it's putting two units in the support line, and it's very expensive, so it doesn't see a lot of play. It's not going to be missed in that sense, but I would like to see it come back in a cooler form, and please make sure this piece of art comes back, because it's so good. Raid, a British special that almost nobody is going to lament the end of. So this is a card that is actually affecting a specific archetype in the meta right now. This is another card that is affecting Exile Air. Exile Air does run this card to slow the opponent down in the early turns while you're trying to get established, because frankly, is a 1 cost order, and the text is cards in enemy hand cost 2 more next turn. This can be very strong, because, as I talked about before, denying tempo to your opponent can be very potent, and this is an incredibly cheap way of doing it. It has a great illustration of, a wartime definition of, someone doing something very similar by commando raiding in and cutting through barbed wire and with a massive explosion. And I mean, come on, the art's cool, right? Anyway, this card will be missed. It is played. Not heavily, but it will be noticed in some decks. And I'm not super sad to see it go because it can be hard to play against. But I would like to see it come back at some point because I think it's fun and plays into control archetypes in a not overly vicious way. It can be annoying, but it's not, throw my computer at the wall annoying most of the time. The CROMWELL Mk IV. It's a 4 cost, 2 op cost, 3/6 tank with heavy armor 1, and it gets one of the most situational pieces of game text I've read in this game. Give Cromwell Mark IV +2 attack when a pinned enemy is destroyed. This card is just mostly trash. It's not played. It's not played for a reason. It's slow. It's expensive. It's situational. Yeah. Even in pin decks, you're not going to run it because it's just not that good, because you're not actually pinning to destroy things that much. You're usually pinning so that you can get to a different win condition. Not going to be missed. I'm certainly not aware of it having any real play, but it does have cool art. So long, Cromwell. M4A1, this is a US special, 4 cost, 2 op cost, 4/5 tank that has can't be targeted by enemy orders. Draw this unit from deck if enemy makes you discard. Speaking of situational and therefore not going to be missed, besides the fact that I believe you get this early on in one of the... It's either you did, I don't know whether you still... Well, obviously you won't because it's rotating out, but you did get this in the early decks, either the 0 level or level 12 deck that you get the US. Beyond its existence in there, no one cares. Sorry, M4A1. Just... To a card that is a US special that people are going to notice going away. Red Devils. I am sad to see this card go, because it's one of my favourite cards in the game. I am not sad to see this card go, because it is unashamedly way too good. Red Devils is a 1 cost, 1 op cost, 1/3 blitz infantry. And has one of the most annoying pieces of game text you will ever come across. It costs the enemy +1 credits to target or attack this unit. I cannot emphasize the degree to which this card has defined win con at times for frontline decks for a long chunk. This card is insanely powerful, and it kind of needs to go away for a bit because it was becoming way too prevalent. Because if you can get it into the front line and any kind of buff on it, your opponent just cries into their beer while you take control of the front line to the point whereby they're probably never getting you off it, which means you've probably won. No, I'm not kidding. This has huge impact, of course, on frontline, and people will be looking for replacements. I personally am not worried. I've seen at least one card that I'm comfortable I would play in place of this. I don't think frontline will go away as an archetype because this card isn't in the pool, but I do think it's a hit and a relevant one. It's a smart remove. As much as I don't want to see it go, as much as, hey, guess what? I'm going to say it's good artwork again, because it really is. I like snow. I don't lament its passing. And I think if it comes back, it might come back with some changes. I mean, it might not. You might bring it back as it is, but it might need a bit of a tweak, because it is very good. CORSAIR F4U 1D US special, 6 cost, 2 op cost, 4/4 fighter that has destruction, destroy random enemy unit. Nice artwork, card that doesn't see a lot of play, not going to be missed. Going to save us all a lot of time by just rolling through that. Because I don't have a lot more to say on this. I don't think anyone's really going to notice it. Partisans! Soviet special, 6 cost order. Take control of an enemy unit. At the end of turn, send it to owner's hand. It's a special. This is the version of control of an opposing unit that I mind a lot less, because it doesn't take it away permanently. I mean, it sort of does if you destroy it, which is how you should use this card, but it doesn't add it to you long term. If you don't destroy it before the end of your turn, it goes back to your opponent's hand and they can play it again. So the smart play with this card was now. Use this to take control of an opponent's card, to trade it out into another unit, hopefully destroying both of them, thus getting you free destruction for 6 credits. It's actually a really decent card, has seen quite a lot of play, will impact some Soviet control decks. I'm not sad to see it go, because I think it's an interesting shake-up, and I've got to call out the artwork, because if you really did take the drinking game seriously and did not listen to my previous warning about me and artwork, this is probably what your life looks like right now. hopefully without the firearms. Seriously, it's a decent card, and it will have some effect. Another Soviet Special Order. Order 227. 2-cost order, give your damaged Soviet units +2 attack and fully repair them. Funky artwork, interesting card, interesting design space, does not see a lot of play because close combat exists and is just strictly better. So it's rotating out, no one's going to miss it. Hopefully, it will come back with either a buff or a change or in a new meta where it might actually see some play, but at the moment, it's an indifferent change. No one's really going to notice. The Soviet KV-2. This is a 7-cost, 3-op cost, 6/5 tank with heavy armor 2. It can't be pinned, and it can't be attacked by artillery or air units. It is a special card. It has really cool looking art because, frankly, the KV-2 is just a really interesting tank. Kind of just a walking pile of armor plating, or rolling pile of armor plating that was really quite slow. Anyway, we're not here for a history lesson. Is this, excuse me, card going to be massively missed? Probably not, no. It's not meta-defining. It's certainly not seeing a huge amount of play. I think if it comes back and wants to see more play, it needs a cost adjustment to rebalance it. Maybe drop the heavy armor to 1 and make it a lot cheaper, because really it just doesn't see play right now. Still, hypothetically, it's a really cool, very durable unit. Elusive Force. This is a Japan order, it is 2-cost, it is special, and the text is, the enemy cannot give orders next turn. This card does not see play. This is so situational it hurts. I mean, hypothetically, you see where they're going with it, but it's anti-tempo. You're giving up so much in the hope that your opponent's going to give a pile of orders next turn. However, I'd be remiss if I didn't point out that rotating it out as we're starting to see more ideas and orders potentially coming into the game, maybe we'll see a lot more orders as well as countermeasures, who knows. That's probably not an accident, but realistically, card doesn't see play, no one's going to miss it. Southern Plan, a card people are going to miss. This is a Japan special order, it is 4-cost, it is a polarizing card that gets a lot of conversation and sees a fair chunk of play. 4-cost, gain 1 extra credit slot, the enemy loses a credit slot. Played well, this card is insane. It is really strong, because you gain tempo while taking tempo away for the future. And by that I mean access to a resource to drive your win condition, whilst at the same time denying your opponent a resource to futurely do it, and you throw your opponent off curve. And that is the big potency of this card, is that it monkeys with the curve, and the curve is something that top players will talk about a lot. We plan our decks around the curve that they're going to play on, and when a card like this monkeys with the curve, we don't like it. I am not sad to see this card rotated. I wouldn't be sad to see it come back either. Also, again, how funky is the art? It's an interesting camo pattern that you can go and look into as to why that would be a camo pattern you would ever use. Theatres of War are interesting in the way that they affect camouflage, but that's not what you're here for. This is a strong card that will affect the way that certain Japan decks play, and I do not regret seeing it disappear, especially with Japan's new archetype messing with credit slots already. This has the potential to become very abused, so I'm glad it's disappearing. Naval Supply Run. This is another Japan special order that is disappearing that is going to have an impact. So Naval Supply Run is a 3-cost order, and it is give your units +2/+1, and at the start of your next turn discard a card at random. This card sees a lot of play in really good Japan aggro decks for a good reason. This card is bonkers value. It's kind of like Blitzkrieg, except it's permanent. That's huge. I think it going away is healthy. I think it will make people look in different directions and possibly towards allies to add a really strong finishing rush to a Japan aggro deck. Japan, Germany will go back to using Blitzkrieg, I have no doubt, unless something else appears. But I do not object to seeing this card go. I think it's a smart rotation. I don't think it's world-breakingly broken and has to go and never come back again, but I do think it's healthy to take a break from it because it is very strong. Also, because, you know, I'm never going to let one pass without it. Really cool artwork. The kind of the emerging splashes of waves and stuff is just funky. But yeah, this card is a smart rotate. I don't object to seeing it. I'm sure we'll see it come back again, and it'll probably come back in the same form that it's in now, because it's pretty decent, but not insanely broken. Just nice to take a break from it. It'll be refreshing. Burst of Fire, another Japan special order that's going away. There are a few of these. I am so happy this card is going away that I can't possibly emphasize it well enough. I personally really do not like this card. I will explain why momentarily. This is a 1-cost order, and it says give a friendly fighter +1 attack and fury this turn. That means the friendly fighter gets +1 attack and can attack twice. This is the OTK card of OTK cards, and it's insane, overpowered, and I hope never comes back in its current form, because it's one of the most unbalanced design cards I've seen. This is not a 1-cost order. I'm sorry, it just isn't. Fury and +1 attack? No! Not 1 cost, 1939. No. Glad to see it gone. Yes, it's going to impact some decks, but I'm not sad to see that happening. Limited card time. Germany, the HEINKEL HE 111. Okay, let's make this quick. The art's pretty. It's a 3-cost, 1-op cost, 4/3 bomber, and has the text, cannot attack units. This is terrible. This is an objectively awful card. Doesn't see play. Probably needs a change when it comes back. Kind of all I've got to say about it. 104 Panzergrenadier, another German limited card. Another German limited card with very iconic artwork. This is very Desert Warfare Germany. Anyway, moving on from artwork, because, hey, if you are playing the drinking game, if you're not unconscious by now, I'm impressed. This is a... Sorry, I can't help it. This is a 2-cost, 1-op cost, 3/3 infantry, and has deployment. Reduce the cost by 1 if you control a tank. Yeah, it's jank. No one's going to miss it. I've yet to find a good use case for this. On the face of it, it's a 3/3 body that you can get down to 0-op cost if you control a tank, but it's just so slow in a nation that has way better ways of dealing with this, so sure, bye. Too bad, so sad. Also, just forgive me, I'm probably getting a little bit punch drunk by now, because I've been recording for over an hour and a quarter at this point, even though this will probably edit down to less. Told you, marathon, not sprint. Joint Operation, a German limited order. It's a 2-cost order. Deal damage to target unit equal to 1 plus the number of unit types you control. Early in the game, this card sees play. Quite a lot of play. Again, funky art, because I'm going to say it a lot. But early on, this sees play. Later on, it sees less play. So it does take away an interesting combined arms style deck piece of removal tech, but not one that I think is overly lamented, because it's quite overcosted for what it is. I mean, it can get you value, but it's kind of indifferent, and it certainly doesn't see an awful lot of high-level play. There are better options. WESPE. The WESPE is a German artillery piece, a 3-cost, 1-op cost, 1/3 artillery, +2 attack if you control a tank. It's a limited thing. It has seen some play in some combined arms decks, because 3/3 artillery is not bad at 1-op cost. But it's slow enough that it doesn't see a lot of play, because most of the time when you start going combined arms, you then start sliding down the fast Heinz kind of a route, and this becomes less relevant. But I am personally a little bit sad to see it leaving, because I think it has a chance to be better going forward. But I'd like to see it come back, maybe with some changes to become more useful, because I think it's a cool concept. I like the idea that it's artillery that gets a buff if you control another type of unit. That sort of staged interaction is something I enjoy as a design space. STUG 3G SCHURZEN. The STUG 3C SCHURZEN, funky art from the Eastern Front battles against the Soviets in the ruined city. It's so cool. Anyway, moving on. 3 cost, 1 op cost, 3/4 tank with pincer plus 1 heavy armor. I'm very glad to see this go away, because this got silly at times in heavy armor spam decks. It just did. Having a pincer that's plus 1 heavy armor, so you play this onto another unit that then gets plus 1 heavy armor, then you play another one of these but target itself, and then this one has 2 heavy armor, and the second one you've played then has 1 heavy armor, and so it got bonkers. Not sad to see it go. Probably needs a rebalance before it comes back, because despite the fact that on the face of it it's just a nice pincer op thing, this can get silly. Stacking heavy armor can be a problem. Rally. 2 cost German order. Your units get plus 1 attack this turn. Remove pin on them, draw a card. It's card draw. Supremely cool art. Very iconic. German recruitment poster, I believe. Anyway. This does not see a lot of play. On the face of it, it's not a bad card, but at 2 cost, it just doesn't see enough play. Germany would rather use draw engines like the 22 infantry or drawing from deploying a tank body than it would get draw from a card, and that is the primary draw on this. Plus 1 attack for a turn is not big enough to be that impactful, and drawing remove pin, I mean, niche case. So really you're paying 2 cost to draw 1 card, and not that great. I don't think it'll be hugely missed, but it's not, you know, it might be nice to see it back with a rework. Might be a way to make this a bit better. Hi Britain, 26 Engineer Regiment. This is a 3 cost, 1 op cost infantry. It's 2/3, and it has deployment to give all other friendly units plus 2 defense. It's a cool picture of one of the little baby troop transports. It's a nice piece of art. It's a card that doesn't see a lot of play. Hypothetically, it's got good value. In actuality, it rarely sees play. A card that sees a lot of play, and is going away, and is going to be lamented by basically very few people, is MONSOON ROT. This is a 6 cost, limited British order. The defense of each enemy unit is set to 1. This card is ridiculous, overpowered, far too strong, in a game where you can get AoE damage. However, I will say, I love the art. A lot, actually. I don't, sadly, love the card. I do not lament seeing it go. Yes, of course I've played it, because it's a card that is just, it's an auto-include in most Brit main decks. This and this and Supply Shortage, which we'll come to later. Spoilers. Super includes. I don't lament this going, and I hope it doesn't come back in its current form. It needs a fix. SPITFIRE Mk II, another Britain limited card, 4 cost, 2 op cost, 3/5 fighter, has plus 2 attack if guarded. I'm just going to move on. This card doesn't see play. It's not great, no one's going to miss it. Blockade. 3 cost, British limited order, deal 1 damage to any target, units in the enemy's hand cost 1 more. Is a terrible card. It's really cool artwork, it's a terrible card. It's too expensive for what it does. Needs a fix. It's not going to see heavy play. 1 damage to any target just isn't that great, and increasing like this compared to raid, which we talked about earlier. It's just, while increasing cost of cards in your opponent's hand is theoretically good value, this is too expensive for what it does. Hasn't seen a lot of play, isn't going to be massively missed. Cruiser Mark III. This is a 4-cost, 1-op-cost, 2/5 British tank. Looks cool. Hey, it's artwork again. Pincer, +2 attack. Isn't bad. You can use this to buff up some stuff, but it's so expensive. It's so late game that it really doesn't see a lot of play. Which is a shame, because the concept's quite nice, like the augmentative effect of British armour. But notwithstanding design concept and space, this card kind of needs a tweak to see any real amount of play. Spoilers, I think it probably needs 1 less attack and to be a lot cheaper. The 1st Texas Infantry, US limited card, 3-cost, 2-op-cost, 1/1. Right, okay, why would anyone ever play this? Well, so in theory, it has exponential returns on its text, because double attack and defense when you gain an extra credit slot. So the first time you gain an extra credit slot, this is a 2/2. Second time, it's a 4/4. The third time, it's an 8/8. The fourth time, it's a 16/16. If you get this on the board and ramp well, keeping it alive through the early iterations, it can be insane, and it's disappearing because, of course, we are seeing more US ramp cards, and I think it's a smart shift, because this thing would eventually end up being abused to all hell with the increase in likely ramp play. Not sad to see it go. It's an overly exponential piece of design mechanic that probably needs a fix. Maybe it needs to have a bigger body and get +1/+1 when you get an extra credit slot. I don't know. 1939 will make their own decisions. And of course I'm going to say, because it's a guy creeping through the dark in the jungle, that it is cool art. Oh, the 5th Rangers, how I'm going to miss you. It's the US Army knife of cards, and it's going. And I am sad to see it go. But I know it'll come back eventually, and it's kind of nice to have a break from it, because it's frankly become too ubiquitous. It is a 4-cost, 4-op-cost, 4/4 US infantry with blitz, which on the face of it is terrible, but if you watched any of my other videos on US decks and cards, you will have heard me explain the potency of its deployment effect, which is choose 1. This unit has 0 operation cost, or gets +4/+4. So this is either a 4-cost 4/4 blitz infantry that costs 0 to operate, or a 4-cost 8/8 blitz infantry that costs 4 to operate, and can therefore be bolster the ranks. This is just a smart change. Do I think this card needs massive altering or a nerf? No. It's fine, as it is, but it's nice to have a break from seeing it played all the time, and the best way to do that, rather than nerfing it, is to just send it for a little holiday, because let's be honest, these dudes in their definitely cool artwork, another one of my favourite pieces of art in the game, have definitely worked hard enough to earn a holiday. Enjoy your break, 5th Rangers. I'm sure we'll see you again. Get some sun. In Hour of Need, US limited order, 4-cost, gain 2 extra credit slots. It's a ramp card. It's rotating out to be replaced by something just a tiny bit slower on curve, and the reason for it is quite simply mathematical, and I agree with it. Funky piece of art. Not amazing, but interesting in the style. You don't see a lot of this style in US art. Anyway, moving on. The point about this is that this works far, far too well with the War Machine. So the War Machine is the 2-cost gain a credit slot ramp. So you play that on turn 2. So turn 3, you've got an extra credit slot. So then you've got 4. Then you play this. See my point? Exponential gain. It's too quick, and it's being replaced by America at War, which is a 5-cost, and instead of giving you 2 extra credit slots, gives you an extra credit slot. Anyway, you can go look at that in my other video. It's a smart change. I applaud you, 1939. Well done. This rotating out whilst ramp is a thing is a smart move. It was too efficient. B-38 Lightning. I'm gonna miss this card. It's not super well played, it's not insanely overpowered or anything like that, and we're what? Well over an hour and a quarter, probably like an hour and a half of recording time, however long this cuts down to. So, little side story, this little thing was a big part of my initial foray into cards. So, the P-38 Lightning is a 4-cost, 2-op cost, 3/5 fighter, which has your bomber units have +2 attack. I loved this card in my initial climb in this game. My initial big climb in this game was made on a Brit-US HMS Hermes-centered deck that I modified from an old deck that J King 7 used. I watched his video and then I applied my own deck building methodology to put some substitutes and things into cards that weren't available anymore, and found a deck that I really enjoyed. And this was Finisher. A really good one. Your bomber units gaining +2 attack was pretty good. This combined with the bomber that you drop that has blitz and gives all of your other bombers -2 operation cost meant that you could build some really potent board states and really hit your opponent hard. I liked this card, I played this card a lot. Later on I realised actually it's not nearly as cost effective as I want it to be. It's probably very overcosted. Probably needs to cost 1 less or have 1 less op cost. I'd probably like to see it cost 1 less. But on the whole, it's not going to be massively missed, but I personally have a connection to this card. And no one will be surprised at this point to hear me say, I think this is a really cool piece of art, particularly because it's a piece of art that's done on the diagonal, which I'm personally a fan of. Anyway. 155mm 1918 model. This is a 4-cost, 1-op cost, limited US artillery piece, with one of the most iconic pieces of art that I have seen used in this game. This is a piece of World War II art that you see, I think, all over the place, or something very similar to it. I definitely remember it from, I think, Airfix kits and other stuff when I was a kid. Anyway, enjoy your hangover if you're still playing the drinking game. When this unit attacks, it's 2/3. When this unit attacks, deal 1 damage to a random enemy. This is not an amazing card, but it can be fun as a piece of artillery, because it feels quite artillery, particularly if, like me, you have the British attitude towards American artillery use, which is the, hey, we fired, hit the thing, and no, oops. But hey, at least it was something that was on the other side. Enjoy the joke, or don't. But what I will say is that this didn't see a lot of play, so it's probably not going to be massively missed, and it's probably overcosted for what it is. Hey, it's the M4A1's cousin. This is the M4A2. This is a 6-cost, 2-op cost, 4/4 US tank. It's a limited card, and it has a really interesting deploy effect, which is deployment. Add an M4A2 to your support line, so for 6 cost you get 2 4/4 2-op cost tanks. On the face of it, that could be quite good, but since they don't have blitz or anything interesting about them, and they're not drawing cards, the Sherman, this just doesn't see play. Not going to be missed. Really nice piece of art again, though. There's some great tank art in this game, but the skyline behind it. Anyway, moving on. Confusion, a limited Soviet order, 3-cost, take control of an enemy unit with cost 3 or less until the end of the turn. You've seen me talk about this in a similar card previously. This is the version of take control that I have less of an objection to. This just gives you the chance to use a unit to blow up another unit and hopefully get both of them in the same time, which can be interesting control play. So it is going to be missed, because occasionally it did see play in Soviet control decks. It does have kind of funky art, although this piece of art's a little bit messy for me. On the whole, it's not world-breaking, it's not going to change the meta massively, but there are decks that did play it which will probably miss it. 214th AMUR. This is a Soviet limited infantry. It is a 4-cost, 2-op cost, 3/6 infantry. It is the defining infantry of the T-34 tank deck. It gives your T-34 units +1 heavy armour and allows them to operate for 1 less, and if you're playing a T-34 deck and playing it well, it's insanely good value, and frankly I'm not overly sad to see it go, because at some point someone was going to find a way to break the T-34 deck into something truly, truly obscene. I think this card is a little bit too good for what it does given the weight of its body. Mostly my objection is to how much defense it has. But 1939 will make their own decision about it. I'm not sad to see it rotate. This too. This is a limited Soviet artillery, 4-cost, 1-op cost, 2/2 artillery piece that has pincer blitz. I mean, I probably has seen some play, but it's not world-breaking. But if you want to build an artillery deck, it can be quite strong. Pincer blitz is not half bad. This is 1-op cost, but it's quite slow at 4-cost. Don't think it's going to be hugely lamented, but it's interesting to see it kind of go, and I'm sure it'll come back at some point. It might come back a bit stronger, I don't know. No surrender. Very, very archetypical order for the Soviet Union. It's a limited order, 5-cost, add light infantry to your support line until it is full, give them blitz. Really cool art, very, very striking, and fits very nicely with the art, which I really like, of its token deployment, which you can see before. I'm not going to expand the size of light infantry. If you can't quite see the op cost, it is a 1-cost, 1/1 with 0 op cost. It's the super vanilla piece of infantry, but the light infantry deck loves this card. I know people who believe that this is too big of a hit to light infantry, and it's really harsh, and light infantry might be just like the tokens deck might be dead. I don't think it is. I really don't. I've played some tokens without no surrender, and I've done okay, thank you very much, and we'll see whether we get any other support for tokens. It is a hit, but it's not world-breaking, and frankly, this card was at times way too strong. Soviet Second Rifles, limited card, 3-op cost, 3-cost, 1-op cost, 3/4 guard, +2 attack against units with blitz. The artwork's very Soviet Union, particularly for the time. The use of red was very common. I could talk about that for a while. Why am I vamping about artwork? Because I want a few seconds before I go. Bye. I mean, that's it. This is not an impactful rotation. Stand fast. Soviet limited order. Give target infantry or tank unit +5/+5 and +5 operation cost. 3-cost order. Cool artwork. Actually, really cool artwork. In my opinion, awful card. Because you need to combo it with something else for it to really have any good value. Like, in theory, that's a big buff. But you also, and certainly if you can somehow stack this into some weird bolster the ranks thing, where you can suddenly then make it +5/+5, then bolster the ranks, set its op cost to 0, and give it like another plus something stupid. I don't know, put it on 5th Rangers, and suddenly 5th Rangers goes from 8/8 to 9/17/17. I mean, yeah, so much stretch, too much hard work, too little value. Still, interesting design space. Japanese order time. This is Outflank. 3-cost Japanese order. Destroy a target unit with guard. I love the cavalry outflanking the tank in the art. This card is awful. This card does not see play. It is overly situational removal, and you're never going to make space for this in your deck. Japanese unit. This is the Type 98 Akini. It is a 2-cost, 0-op cost, 2/1 tank that gets +1 attack if you've attacked with another unit this turn. Nice art. 0-op cost. Doesn't see play. Doesn't surprise me that it doesn't see play. Doesn't really fit into anything. It's not enough of one thing or the other. No blitz, very situational, very easily. P61 Tony. Oh, how I'm glad to see this card go away. It's pretty. It's also pretty good. So it's a 6 cost, 3 op cost, 5/4 blitz fighter, which on the face of it is kind of okay, but quite spenny. However, the text, spend 7 credits at the end of enemy turn and add it to the battlefield, makes this just the king of ambush OTKs. Like, your opponent hangs 7 credits, then at the start of their turn they drop this and put burst of fire on it twice and you die. Don't like it, never going to. I've never been a massive fan of overly specific OTKs, and frankly it's too easy to build a deck that ramps this out at great speed. Not sad to see it go. Even if it can be blunted by a guard, it's still really good. Glad to see a break. Type 1 Chi-He. This is a 4 cost, 2 op cost, 2/4 Japanese tank with +4 attack on your turn. That basically never sees a lot of play, and probably was never going to. Not going to loiter on this for too long. The artwork's pretty. I particularly like the tree line in the background. Don't think the card is going to be a big miss. Speaking of not a big miss, the Sakura Regiment. 1 cost, 1 op cost, 1/3 infantry. It's limited. The artwork's pretty. A lot of the Japan artwork is quite pretty in this, but this particular one, just, I don't know why, this particular piece of artwork kind of gives me the feels. Anyway, side effect. Has +2 attack if you have fewer cards in hand than the welcome to situational. This card doesn't see play. Moving on. Lost Convoy, a German countermeasure, and a standard, the first of the standard cards leaving play, that is rotating out, and I think is rotating out at just the right time. And I'll explain why. Because this card doesn't see a lot of play, actually. However, that is about to change, which is why it's rotating out, in my opinion. So this is a 0 cost countermeasure, so you can't see it coming. When the enemy deploys a unit, give it -2 attack. Now, on the face of this, this is a relatively minor thing, because, you know, it could be a bit situational and stuff, but -2 attack is not nothing. And if you're suddenly able to trigger other things off countermeasures, in particular, for example, if you stack a couple of these and then reduce the shiny new infantry's cost by 4, or triggering to 0 cost countermeasures, suddenly you start to see how this could be abused in countermeasure heavy decks, for the simple reason that it's 0 cost. What this card needs as a countermeasure is to cost 1 and be better. Really, that's it. Because cost 0 countermeasures are a dangerous piece of ground to tread on. And I think 1939 have become aware that if countermeasures become heavily played, this will be abused a lot. Iron from the North. A 1 cost German order. If you control the front line, gain 3 additional credits. It's standard. The artwork is epic. It didn't see a lot of play. Because there are just better options out there. Really that simple. 5 Panzergrenadier. 3 cost, 1 op cost, 2/3 German infantry. Obviously it's standard. Pincer. After this unit attacks and survive combat, your other units with an active pincer get +1/+1. I have seen this card try hard. I have seen lots and lots of try hard with this card, trying to make it do something cool, because on the face of it, it's an effect that could be really good. Unfortunately, it's never quite landed. I think it's just a bit too expensive and slow for the payoff, and if you ever did get the payoff, it would, if you found a way to really get the payoff off this, it would probably get nerfed very quickly, because exponential gains. Not massively impactful, not really regretting seeing it rotate out. BF-109E7 Trop. This is the 4 cost, 2 op cost, 3/3 German fighter that has one of my favourite deployment effects in the game, and is a card I recommended a lot to new players because it can be very good, especially in a combined arms deck. It gains +1/+1 if you control a tank or infantry, and +3/+3 if you control both. So when you play this well, it is a 4 cost, 6/6 with 2 op cost. Can be a really good card. I think it rotating out makes sense. Be nice to see a break from it. Be interesting to see what replaces it, certainly for me in things that I advise using in the early game for just good value. 56 Jaeger Regiment. Okie dokie. So this is another card I really quite like. I think it can be very good. It's also another piece of artwork that I really like. Who knew? So this is a 1 cost, 1 op cost, 2/1 infantry, which is particularly underwhelming, but its pincer effect at -1 operation cost can be really, really good, especially early on in your Kards career, because this thing could have a lot of impact at low ranks, because -1 op cost used well can be very powerful. Anyway, it's rotating out. I don't think it's world-breaking, but it's an interesting rotation, and we'll certainly have to see some adjustment to it not being available anymore. Irish Guards. British standard unit going away. 3 cost, 1 op cost, 2/4 infantry with Fury. That has Pincer, +1 attack. Funky artwork. Card that didn't see play a lot. Moving on. Supply shortage. Mentioned earlier when we were talking about Monsoon Rot. 3 cost, British order. Cool. Really cool artwork. Shoot, like raiding an enemy convoy. Very funky, very on theme for the thing. Looks like a very potent thing that's happening, which is ironic considering how ludicrously potent this card actually is. It's 3 cost. Enemy units receives 1 damage at the start of owner's turn. So, something to clarify. On its own, this card is not bad. In a vacuum, 3 cost for giving ticking damage to your enemy is good value, but not insane. However, combined with things like Monsoon Rot, this is 9 cost board clear that Brits could trigger 6 times a game. It's silly. It needs to go away because it was becoming too prevalent, and it probably needs a little bit of a tweak before it comes back. I'm not quite sure what the tweak will be, but yeah, or it just needs to come back when there isn't something that can combo with it so crazily well. Probably not going to be lamented by anyone. Certainly not going to be lamented by me, even though it is a powerful control tool. I think having a break from it is healthy. Resolute Defence. It's a British standard order. It's 1 cost. Give a unit with guard +1/+3. Artwork's cool. Card doesn't see play. I don't really have much else to say on this. Like the idea is to help guard heavy decks, but it just didn't happen. Emergency measures. 2 cost British standard order. Choose and discard a Spitfire to add RAF ground crew to the support line. The Spitfire idea is out there. This I've got to say, the art's really pretty. Look at the anyway. The idea was out there for Spitfire interaction, but it never, like, it currently at the very least, it does not see a lot of play. It's definitely not doing anything major. And I don't think that anyone's going to massively miss this order. The M3 Grant. A 4 cost, 2 op cost, 2/5 guard tank that gets deployment. Gets +2/+2 if your HQ has 25 or more defense. Sure, we can see where this is going, but it wasn't good. It isn't good. It's not going to see a lot of play. Cool art. Observer Corps. Firstly, I love this art. Will surprise no one. I like this kind of interesting adjustment in art and the colours and textures on it. Secondly, I personally think that this card can be underrated depending on where things go in a direction, and I think removing it from things right now is probably a smart move. It is a 1 cost order. Choose a card with cost 5 or more in your hand and reduce its cost by 2. It's a standard card, and if we start to see Britain become very order-heavy direct function, and it looks like we're going to, commandos, we're looking at you, there is the potential that this card could become incredibly strong. Kinda glad that it's not going to be around. Kinda sad that it's not going to be around, because when I first realised commandos might be a thing, one of my immediate things was, ooh, Observer Corps, to reduce some of the more sad it's going. But I see why. The SB2C Helldiver. It's a US card. first US standard that we're looking at, 2 cost, 2 op cost, 2/2 bomber. As generic can be. With a really interesting piece of text. When you gain an extra credit slot, add a copy of this unit to your hand. There have been attempts to make this into something cool, because it propagates itself, and that can be funky, like lots and lots and lots of 2/2 bombers. But it doesn't have blitz, there isn't a way to give it blitz, it's never really gone anywhere, and it probably isn't going to, and given that we're seeing more ramp stuff, maybe there's the potential that there's cards coming out that might have made it broken, or maybe 1939 are just rotating it because really it's not seeing any play. You want to have it see play, by the way, 1939. Find a way to give it some actual teeth. Either it has to do more damage, or it needs blitz. Second, California. This is a card which many people will be celebrating the end of. It's a funky piece of art, it's a card which is very iconic, because you will see a lot of it early on in your cards journey, either using it to win lots of games, or losing lots of games to it, because it can have one of the most frustrating pieces of text in the game. 5 cost, or 1 op cost, 5/3 Blitz Infantry, which is not amazing until you read, combat damage dealt to this unit is reduced to 1. This thing attacks a 10/5. The 10/5 dies and it takes 1 damage. This thing was bonkers and continued to be bonkers at low rank, even to moderate rank. Didn't see a lot of play at upper ranks until we reached certain changes in the meta where we started to see more of this see play, because removal was less prevalent. For a while, it really just didn't see play at top level because there was so much removal in the game that people just saw it exist and snapped it out of existence and moved on. I don't lament its going. I'm kind of glad to see the end of it, because it was always a very frustrating card for me, because it just feels that there's something janky about the design. I just think that the text is too good in general. Like, anything that reduces damage to 1 and is a standard card is probably too strong, regardless of its stat line. But anyway. United States card again, 26th Infantry Regiment, 4 cost, 1 op cost, 4/4 infantry, with some nice winter art, has +2 attack for each adjacent unit. This card will not see play. It's rotating out, it's not going to be missed. I mean, early game, some people kept it in frontline decks, because if you could get it into the front line with the +2 attack, it could be kind of good, but ultimately, it's not good enough. So it rotates, don't think it'll be missed. 112th Infantry Regiment, 1 cost, 1 op cost, 1/2 infantry, more cool winter art, once again +2 attack for each adjacent unit. Same song, different verse. See some early play, but lack of blitz makes it just not have the value to see regular play in most decks. Firewall, 2 cost US standard order, give target unit cannot attack the enemy HQ. Really cool art, really interesting design space, really annoying card when it gets played on things. Not meta defining, but it does see edge case play, and at certain ranks can be really annoying. Don't think anyone's going to massively miss it, because either you just don't care about it, or you get really annoyed whenever you see it. Naval Task Force, another US order. This time it's 1 cost, choose 1, add a naval bombardment to hand or a supply shipment to hand. Honestly, this is mostly rotating out. By the way, the artwork on this and its spawned cards is cool. This is mostly rotating out because it just doesn't need to be in the game while the developer mechanic is being properly bedded in, because it's just a weird contradiction, because it's just similar enough to be a bit janky. It's not world-breakingly strong, it didn't see huge amounts of play, but I know why it's rotating out from a design perspective, because you want to clean your lines, and I would want to do the same thing, so while develop is growing, this doesn't need to be around. Hasty Reinforcement, Soviet Standard Order. 1 cost, units you deploy or add this turn randomly gain +1/+1 blitz or ambush. Yeah. I don't have a lot to say on this. I just... Sadly, even the artwork doesn't set me alight here. I have very little to say to this other than I don't think anyone's going to miss you. Kamenskaya. Like the art on this. 1 cost order, fully repair all friendly ground units. It's too situational to justify occupying deck space. It's that simple. It's actually a nice idea, it's a nice design concept, but like most of the fully repair stuff, it just doesn't justify its place until somehow this becomes more relevant. Shame really, because nice design idea, really cool art. 461st Rifles. 5 cost, 1 op cost, 5/3 Soviet unit with ambush, and super cool art. I would actually put this on a poster on a wall. Anyway, when this unit is dealt damage, your HQ gets an equal amount of defense. But it's ambush. What? It's just janky. No one's gonna miss it. Like, it's a bizarre, contradictory design. Thura's Gate. I'm kind of going to miss this because I quite like this card, and not just because it looks cool art-wise. I like the design space. It's a 2-cost Soviet standard order. Pin target unit, deal 2 damage to adjacent units. I love this as a control card. It's kind of what I want control cards to be. I'm a bit sad that it's going. I mean, it's not world-breaking, it wasn't defining metas, but I'm kind of sad to see it go because I personally quite like it as a design idea. 554th Rifle Regiment. I am not sad to see this card leave the game. Because at some point, this thing was... you were going to find ways to do something really janky with this, because as much as it seems innocuous, it really isn't. So, 554th Rifle Regiment is a standard Soviet infantry. It is 1/1 and has blitz. So far, why would you care? Because it's free. Literally free. It is 0 cost, 0 op cost. At some point, there's going to be a way to absolutely abuse the life out of this. Someone was going to find a way, because this is just dangerous design space to tread on. We have recently seen a lot of really good deck designers showing us the value of 0 op cost, and add to that 0 deployment cost and blitz, and at some point this was going to be bonkers. Cool line art design, though. War production! Too bad, so sad. Bye-bye. Okay, I should probably say more than that. I really should, but this has a visceral response for me because I was around during the jet meta. This is a 0 cost Soviet order. I'll say that again. This is a 0 cost Soviet order. Gain 2 additional credits this turn. Discard all non-unit cards. However, 99 times out of 100, this is the only order you're running in your deck because it's acceleration on a stick and it's way too strong, and I'm very glad it's going away, and please don't ever bring it back. Yeah, I told you I'd say some more, and I'm trying to keep it relatively thin, but this is again just dangerous design space. Will say, it is pretty. Deadly Duty. Japan order, 1 cost, destroy a friendly unit, draw 2 cards. Standard on the face of it, what are you even using this for? But realistically, in some self-damage kind of retribution damage decks, this saw some play. It's been in and out of various, like, just, oh my god, I'm just dealing damage to you by dying decks, and drawing 2 cards isn't terrible. I'm personally not sad to see it leave. I'm also not overly pleased to see it leave. Honestly, the rotation of this leaves me mostly indifferent. It's not like it was breaking the game, but it was an interesting design space. The Type 137mm artillery piece for Japan. This is a 2 cost, 1 op cost, 1/2 artillery piece. Deployment gets +1/+1 and blitz if your HQ has 10 or less defense. Yay? I'm really, really losing, and I can get a quick 2 points of damage for 3 credit. Anyway, shockingly, didn't see a lot of play, probably wasn't going to. Speaking of didn't see a lot of play, probably wasn't going to, New Doctrine, another Japan 1-cost order. This one is ignore cannot attack enemy HQ on the target unit. So this is a 1-cost direct counter to firewall that no one cares about. Which is a shame, because the art's nice. Anyway, we're done. 6th Infantry Regiment. So it's a Japan infantry. It's a 2-cost, 0-op cost, 2-2 infantry regiment with Fury that really didn't see play. Kind of moving on, really. There's not a lot to say about this. It's not going to be massively missed, apart from in a few decks that were trying to take advantage of Fury, and even then, frankly, it's just, I mean, even at 0-op cost, it's too slow. Although there's probably a way to exploit 0-op cost with this into some weird OTK, because 0-op cost is the thing. Reorganize! 0-cost order. We all know how much I like these. 0-cost cards are always interesting for me. Super funky artwork. I mean, not massively or relevant to the text of the card, but I like the artwork. Reorganize. Choose a card in hand and shuffle it into your deck. Draw a card. I pay a card space in my deck to cycle cards. No. It's just... this never works the way that designers want it to, in my experience. I get the idea behind it, if you're digging for combos and stuff, but really, just cards like this don't really find space in decks. Shame, but they're never going to. Sneak Maneuver. Relevant for lots of reasons, actually, but the main one is this is the last card on our list. And I've been recording for over 2 hours. 1-cost Japan order. Really pretty art. Very minimalist, which is very Japan, but very interesting. Anyway, the order itself. Give target infantry or tank with 0 operation cost plus 2 attack. Okay, so we can see where we're going with this, which is this is a card that was attempting to strengthen up 0-op cost as a thing, but even when 0-op cost was used as a thing, this card didn't see play. No one is including this in the deck and paying a credit for it. Sorry, they're not. It won't be missed. Ooh, well, I told you it'd be a marathon, not a sprint. We're there. That is the entire rotation list. I have covered all of the cards, given my opinions, as ever. I hope this is useful to you. I hope you enjoy the content. Like, subscribe, follow, join the Discord. You know the drill. Thank you all for hanging around and sticking with this very long video. Alright folks, as always, be good human beings, stay well, and I will catch you next time.